It's never been more clear. We have a major update on the future of the New York Islanders as general manager Mathew Darche has come forward and committed to this team's star forwards. In addition, he's also said he believes this Islanders core can make the playoffs next season. We're going to break it all down on this episode of Islanders Digest, really talk about what the Islanders' chances are of making the playoffs and whether or not it even makes sense for this team to make the playoffs next season for the long-term future of the franchise. Before we get into that, we want to quickly point out our goal is 1,000 subscribers before the NHL draft, and we are now just 70 subs away. Thank you to all of you who have already subscribed to the channel. Your support means a lot as we continue to put out more Islanders content every single day in what's been a really busy offseason for the New York Islanders, although perhaps it's not going to be as busy as we hoped. Now, I don't think many Islander fans were outright hoping for the Islanders to trade Matt Barzal and Bo Horvat, and now we know almost for certain that that will not be happening. Mathew Darche has communicated to both star players that they will not be moved this offseason, clarifying they will be staying on the island, giving them more security after what's really been a offseason of a lot of rumors, especially before Mathew Darche was hired as the general manager of the New York Islanders. I mean, we talked about trading both players, especially when there were a lot of rumors from Montreal and Vancouver swirling around. I think there was a lot of hope from those franchises that the Islanders' new general manager would come in and decide the best course of action for this team is a rebuild. That is not what's going to be happening, and there'll be some disappointment from those teams, but I think this makes the most sense for the New York Islanders. There's a reason why teams like Montreal and Vancouver really wanted Bo Horvat and Matt Barzal. These are players who can really add a huge level of stability and offense when it comes to your forward core. Vancouver is really struggling in the center position, especially after trading JT Miller because of the Pedersen beef. In addition, Montreal is a team that's on the rise, and they really need a second-line center to play with Demidov. And Bo Horvat and Matt Barzal would have been a great fit for either of those teams. Of course, Bo Horvat is from Vancouver, but of course there were rumors that perhaps they try to trade for him back. But the Islanders are keeping these players. I think it is the right call for the Islanders moving forward, especially now the Islanders have the first overall pick. It no longer really makes sense to trade Bo Horvat or Barzal to really kick off a rebuild. The whole idea around that was trying to collect enough draft capital, potentially find new players for your core. But now with the first overall pick, you're getting that right away. Whether you pick Matthew Schaefer, James Higgins, or Michael Misa, whoever you pick, that is going to be a player you expect to be in your core. If not next season, a couple years down the line. And as a result, it makes sense for the Islanders to keep these players. And what's really interesting when it comes to Mathew Darche's plans is he made it really clear that his plan is a retool rather than a full-out rebuild. We've talked about on the channel, full-out rebuilds are really risky for franchises to take on. Sometimes they work out, but then you have examples like the Sabres where you just can't get anything going. It's been 14 years in Buffalo. They've gone through, 3 consecutive rebuilds? It's a really dangerous territory to go into. And for a team like the Islanders that has players like Barzal, Bo Horvat, you have Ilya Sorokin, Noah Dobson, if you even want to add Romanov to that list, you have enough core pieces. You're adding a first overall pick where you don't want to go all the way down that rebuild route. Still, one interesting thing when it comes to Mathew Darche talking about next season for the Islanders is he said he thinks this team can compete for a playoff spot. And now note, that is not him promising playoffs. That's not him saying he thinks this Islanders team is going to be a playoff team. But him saying this team is going to compete for a playoff spot next season is really interesting because there is some question on if that is the best route for the New York Islanders. Another thing that is noted, and when it comes to this retool plan rather than rebuild, it seems very clear that Mathew Darche is really going to run back this Islanders team for the most part that struggled to make it into the playoffs last season and really fell apart towards the end of the year. One thing that really is giving a hint away that this Islanders team really is not going to go through a lot of changes is the more you hear Mathew Darche talk about different players. I mean, we had a lot of talk in the offseason that we thought perhaps Scott Mayfield would be on the move. That is not the case. It seems pretty clear that he's going to be staying. In addition, other players that we talked about potentially moving in the drafts, such as J.G. Pageau, Casey Cizikas, and even Ryan Pollock, also seem to be staying. This is a post from Islanders Rumor talking about the Islanders draft party. And in terms of the draft party, Ryan Pollock, Casey Cizikas, J.G. Pageau, and Scott Mayfield will all be in the building. So highly unlikely any of them are currently being talked about in trades, because if they were being talked about, you probably wouldn't want to have them in there for the draft party. That could be a pretty awkward situation. Again, you can always change who's going to the draft party, things like that. But all these are just signs that Mathew Darche, when he says he does believe in this group, that he truly does. Or at least he wants to have a year to really evaluate these players. Now, we talked about in previous videos when it comes to especially guys like JG Pageau that perhaps it makes sense to hold them until the deadline. But when it comes to having faith in this Islanders team next season, I have some doubt, and I've talked to a lot of you guys in the comments. Again, I love having hockey conversations with you guys in the comments below. But we've had some conversations, and some of you were saying that I've been a bit of a pessimist on this channel. For the record, when I talk negatively about next season for the Islanders, I think part of that is actually some optimism in the sense where I just see the potential for the Islanders to really have a rough year and therefore pick up a high-end prospect in what is a stacked draft. It's not me having no faith in the future in the New York Islanders, but when you look at this roster, I know Mathew Darche says he believes this team can compete for the playoffs, and I do think this team can be competitive. Again, this team was in it until the end of last year. But when you look at this roster, there seems to be a lot missing, especially when it comes to the offense. Now, it's really important to note when it comes to last season, this was a team for the Islanders that was riddled with injuries. This is a team that likely, if they were completely healthy last season, would have made the playoffs. I do firmly believe that. But looking at the team this year, you're missing Brock Nelson. You traded away Brock Nelson for that big package, getting Callum Ritchie and a first-round pick. I do want to note this is the Islanders roster card from last season, so Palmieri's contract is the old contract. In addition, Callum Ritchie is not yet on the roster, and I do believe he is going to be that third-line center for the New York Islanders. But still, looking at this roster, I feel like there is a lot to be desired, especially when it comes to the offense, even with Bo Horvat and Matt Barzal, who it's going to be nice to see them play together. I think they really elevate each other's games. As you can even see a 40-goal season from Bo Horvat playing with Matt Barzal. When you look at the rest of the lineup, especially in the top six, it's really hard, in my opinion, to make the argument that this Islanders team is going to be in the playoffs. I can see them kind of being in the conversation on the outside. But the big thing for me is, in order for you to really get good production out of Bo Horvat and Matt Barzal, it seems like you have to put them together. And those are your team's top two centers. If you're putting them together, having Pageau on the second line as your second line center is a really rough look to start the season. I know some people are going to say perhaps Callum Ritchie can step up. And I have hope that by the end of the season, Callum Ritchie does earn a second-line center role. In the beginning of the season, you're going to want to be playing him centered, sheltered minutes on the third line. And just looking at, even at Pageau, I mean, you expect 40 points out of him, 45, maybe 50, considering he's going to be playing a bigger role. And Palmieri is a great depth piece. You can expect 20 goals from him. Holmstrom had a really big year. You're going to need him to step up in a big way if this Islanders team is going to make the playoffs. But you're really relying a lot on Anders Lee and Palmieri to both stay healthy and have incredibly productive seasons when they're both getting a year older. Anders Lee's going to be 34 and Palmieri as well. For me, it seems like I don't see it when it comes to the Islanders making the playoffs, especially when you consider, I think one of the Islanders' biggest strengths in the past when they were able to compete for those playoff spots was having Pageau in the third-line center role really automatically gives you a solid third line. And now that he's going to be playing up the lineup, well, I do think he can at least hold his own on a second line for a team. On the third line, Casey Ziquez, Duclair, and Engvall, that does not seem like a line that's going to be able to provide you enough production. Now, Siplikov, I also expect to have a bigger role on this team. Perhaps wonder if he's going to make a role in the top six. It does seem like a good fit for him. But playing on his own on the fourth line, while he was able to provide some needed punch in the season last year, I don't see a playoff team with this Islanders group, at least the way it's currently constructed, if they run the same team back, which is really seeming like what we're going to get. Now, I'm sure it's not going to be the exact same team. Again, I've already talked about Callum Ritchie is going to be a part of this group. In addition, I'm sure Mathew Darche is going to make some moves. But looking at where this team is, especially considering Brock Nelson is no longer part of the Islanders, it really seems like while the Islanders can likely be around the same spot they were last season, I don't really see them taking a step. Even with Matt Barzal playing a full year, I feel like even if this team is healthy, and that's another big if when it comes to the Islanders, this is a team that struggled to stay healthy. Even with a full healthy year, you're adding Matt Barzal but losing Brock Nelson. I don't see it. And I think it makes more sense for the Islanders to probably struggle a little bit next season, pick up a top 10 pick again, and also looking when it comes to the other teams around the New York Islanders. Pittsburgh is going to be pretty abysmal, I'm going to be honest. But other teams like the Rangers, the Detroit Red Wings, Columbus Blue Jackets, Utah, there's a lot more pressure for them to be better. So it's going to be hard for the Islanders to take a step up ahead of them. Vancouver, I can definitely see dropping down the standings. This was a team for the Islanders last year, though, that won 35 games and lost 35 games. This was a very mediocre team. And I think it's probably going to be more like that next season. We'll see. Perhaps Patrick Waugh having a full coaching staff, perhaps you can get more production out of the power play. But in addition, I mean, even though I think the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to be terrible, I think this is a Buffalo Sabres team that really can't get any worse than it was last year. I think they're going to be a little more effective. The Anaheim Ducks, I actually have a lot of faith in. They just acquired Chris Kreider. I think they can really make moves to be more competitive next season. Seattle Kraken, kind of a mess. I don't expect much of them. The Boston Bruins, I think, can really take a step back up. I think they kind of underperformed, especially towards the end of the year. Last year, I think at one point they lost 12 straight games. Philadelphia, I think, is a mixed bag. But realistically, I do think this Islanders team, while Matthew Darche does say he believes they can compete for the playoffs, and I think in a perfect scenario where everything goes right, and I'm talking like Callum Ritchie has a Calder caliber season, I do think this is a team that can contend for the playoffs. But it seems like the peak is definitely a wild card entry, and I think it's going to take really everything to go right for the Islanders. Frankly, I don't think this will be a playoffs team. Still, I do think that it makes sense for the Islanders to keep Matt Barzal and Bo Horvat, even if the Islanders are not going to be the most competitive team next season, because I think they can turn it around quickly. Oh, I don't think they can make the playoffs next season. I do think that is not going to be the same case for 2027. But let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think I'm being too pessimistic when I look at this roster? Do you think this Islanders team can make the playoffs? Again, I really don't see it, but I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. Have a hockey discussion with you guys. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. My name is Patrick Nilan. This is Islanders Digest. Let's go Islanders.